Hello everyone, welcome to another Watchful Software's webinar, this time on strategies for policy-driven information classification. Our agenda for today starts as usual with the introduction and house rules. Then we'll move forward to business context and challenges, and then start on our theme for today, which is policy-driven classification, data classification methods, the types of policy-driven rules, content, context, and metadata-aware policy-driven rules, also rule-based policy-driven rules, and we will finalize with some use cases on the subject. And there will be also time for Q&A, and we'll wrap up. My name is Katia Franco, and I serve as a product marketing manager at Watchful Software. So the house rules for today are that you are all muted centrally, so you don't need to mute and unmute yourself. And this webinar is being recorded, so you don't need to worry on making print screens because you'll have it available on our website later on. And the Q&A session will be at the end. So you can enter your questions anytime using the questions feature in the GoToWebinar control panel. We also made available a few documents that you can download from the handouts box on your right. So now let's begin with our business context. We all know that organizations of all sizes are challenged constantly to protect a growing quantity of valuable digital information against careless mishandling and malicious use. And the increasing of incidents of information theft underscore the need for better protection of digital information. Also, implementing a solid information classification policy, or ICP, should be the first step to protecting sensitive information, and that's not always the case in some organizations. Our point 3 refers to a growing list of legislative and regulatory requirements that add to the ongoing task of protecting digital files and information and burdens your users even more. And our point 4 refers to the intricate and unclear data classification strategies that aren't understood by users and sometimes even end up never being used in the real world. Additionally, the classification requirements many times don't take in consideration the business impact and the volume of legacy data present in the organization. So, in this context, we know that organizations need to control and protect their sensitive and confidential information against information leakage by dynamically applying a predefined ICP and to all types of unstructured information, and that's emails, documents, spreadsheets, presentations, etc. At the point of creation of that information. So data classification should be established by setting a set of principles regarding the proper use, handling, and application of various protection profiles for each data category. So to successfully implement a policy-driven classification process, your organization must know its data very well. And for that, it must answer a few questions like, what data is truly sensitive? Who should have access to it? How the data is to be handled, when the classification should change and if it should change, and where the data should be protected. So there are two main methods to achieve data classification. First is policy-driven, that relieves the user from the workload and overhead of having to know, understand, and apply the corporate policies, and at the same time increases user and organizational awareness of the value and sensitivity of the data and ensuring compliance. And there's also the user-driven method. This is when the user is able to make data classification decisions or override automatic classification if corporate policy allows it. So RightsWATCH enables you to have the flexibility to combine both methods according to your company's security policies. For example, corporately defined policy rules can override user decision and choices if your company chooses to do so. So, which type of policy-driven rules are there? So, when the company doesn't want to rely on voluntary and even remembered user compliance, or wants to relieve the user from the workload of having to know and understand all corporate policies, the RightsWATCH policy-driven engine can be set to trigger a few policy-driven rules. For example, default, suggested, and enforced classification of emails and files, presenting disclaimers that need to be signed by the users for the user to acknowledge the policy being applied, and also for compliance purposes. So this will also be logged into a database. Warnings that can be presented to users when they are trying to make an action, and even blocking users from performing certain actions like sending emails or saving files. Also, some documents or emails must be automatically classified either by content, meaning the information contained in the email or document, like data formats or regular expressions, their context, like the person who is creating the email or the file, where it will be stored or sent to, etc., or even the embedded metadata, the current classification of the files, the file properties, for example. So please keep in mind that all these classification criteria, content, context, and metadata are not mutually exclusive. So your organization can set up policy rules based on several criteria at the same time. So they can be mixed and matched. So let's see how all of this works in using RightsWATCH. Here we have the Outlook interface with the new email, where you can see that with RightsWATCH, the user has a few options to choose from in terms of classification. Okay, so there's a added RightsWATCH interface to the usual Outlook interface that you are used to see. So there are scopes here in the first line, and that can be, scopes can be internal departments, teams allocated to projects, for example. It can be for external emails, or in this case, generic classification regarding scope. And there are also levels of classification. And these levels are attributed to scopes. In this case, the scope generic can go from public to secret, and these levels of classification can support encryption or not, and that is of your choice. Also, the scopes and the levels are completely customizable according to your corporate policy. So here RightsWATCH is able to automatically classify the information based on context and metadata, as we have seen before. In this particular case, this email is being classified based on content because in the subject line and in the body of the email, there is a reference of secret information. So the system picks it up and automatically classifies this file as generic and secret according to our corporate policy rule. So this can be made automatically, but if your company chooses to do so, you can allow the users to change this or define this by themselves. So in the next screenshot, we can see that as well as in Outlook, you have the same interface presented to the users. So there's consistency of the RightsWATCH across all platforms, Outlook, Office, PDF, as it is shown here. And also, when the user is trying to classify this file, this PDF file, as confidential, the system is alerting him. So it prompts a warning and a disclaimer so that the user can be educated on the information control policies in place. Additionally, RightsWATCH allows for automatic file reclassification that we call ITA, Intelligent Time Access. And that allows for the automatic upgrade or downgrade of the classification on a Microsoft Office file after a specified date in the future. In this example, the user is able to define how many days from now, this is the ITA time frame, will the classification of this Word document change. So he is able to choose from 7 to 30 days, but this is completely configurable by the system administrator in the RightsWATCH admin console, and it can go from 7 to 360 days. ITA is particularly interesting in situations in which classification levels are related to projects that have an expiration date and whose sensitivity decreases or increases after a specific day. As we have seen before, another type of policy-driven rules that RightsWATCH can apply are the warn and block rules. So, warning rules trigger a warning, of course, to the user performing an action. So, an alert is shown for user educational and training purposes, but the user will be able to save the file or send the email anyway. He will be allowed to perform an action despite the warning. But there are also blocking rules, and this is the example that we are showing here. It's triggered a blocking action, and it prevents the user from doing what he was hoping to accomplish. Here, an alert is shown to the user, and independently of the chosen classification level, the file won't be able to be saved or the email won't be sent. In this case, the save button is grayed out, so the user is not able to save this confidential file in a temporary storage folder. All these types of rules that we have seen regard new data and are applied in the moment of creation of the file or the email. But how does RightsWatch address the legacy data issue? All those unclassified pre-existing data in users' desktops, shared network drives, or cloud-based drives. So this can be done with RightsWatch in two ways. The Global Protector client, where the user is able to right-click the file or the folder that he wants to classify and selects the classification to be applied to the files or the folder. However, corporately defined policy rules can override user decisions and choices, and that can be triggered by the content of those files, the context and the metadata in those files. The second option is called the Global Protector Server, and this is the automatic classification of files, where corporately defined policy rules are applied on every file type that the Global Protector finds in a process of scanning corporate repositories. And this is triggered by the system administrator, okay? There is also a third way that we call the Global Protector Web, and that enables the automatic classification of files based on the defined content and metadata-aware policy rules. So the RightsWatch Global Protector Web is actually a software component that is installed on an Internet Information Services web server and operates independently of any agent or plugin running on the endpoint. So Microsoft Office files are classified when they are being exported or downloaded from the web server, and this process is completely transparent to the users. With RightsWatch, all of these rules are also role-based policy rules, which allows a corporation to escape the limitation of a one-type-fits-all approach. So how does this work? Well, RightsWatch Policydriven engine allows a company to set up different policy rules to be applied only to designated users or groups of users. So enterprises become able to segregate and decide to which individual users or Active Directory groups of users the policies are to be applied. And these role-based policy rules are also dynamic. For example, if a user changes roles, that is, moves from to a different department or project or organizational unit, the corresponding set of policy rules are automatically updated by RightsWatch. So no additional work for you. So taking the previous example of file reclassification with the intelligent time access feature, in RightsWatch, access to set intelligent time access is role-based. So this means that the company decides which groups of users, if not all, have the need to be able to set ITA and to which documents. So users are granted the ITA right and can choose to apply it and decide how many days or months the documents will hold that security classification. And when the defined period of time expires, the documents are dynamically reclassified in accordance to corporate policy. So here we are presenting two screenshots from RightsWatch Admin Console. The first one is the Rules Definition tab, where you can define the rules and to which classification level and scope those are to be applied. and also the user roles definition tab, where you can create a simple matrix like in the picture to assign users to regarding their information security clearance levels. And once users are assigned to their appropriate clearances, all the hard work is done and managed by the system. So when users create and send information, it can be automatically classified based on the rules that are previously established. So to finalize, let me ask you to participate in a short 3-question quiz. So what we are asking is, which type of rule are we applying in each one of these use cases? So in this case, an email is automatically classified based on to whom the email is being sent, which content is written in the email, and which files are attached to it. So you can answer. You have 3 choices here. Which one do you think it's the most likely in this case? Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so the right answer is, of course, and you guys were all right. It's content, context, and metadata aware policy rules. So the next question is, an enterprise leverages RightsWATCH Global Protector to dynamically scan its entire legacy data file share and automatically classifies all files in that repository, enforcing the policy rules. So which one is it? Is it blocking users from performing actions? Is it the Global Protector server? Is it suggested classification of emails and files? Okay, just a few more seconds to give you the opportunity to answer. Okay, so in this case, the correct answer is the Global Protector server feature, because the Global Protector server feature is able to scan for file repositories and automatically classify them according to the policy rules predefined by the sysadmin. Moving on to the final question. And in this use case, a user is prevented from saving a document to an unauthorized location and with unauthorized content. So RightsWATCH blocks the file from being saved and shows the user the reason why. So here are your choices. Is it warn block rules? Is it enforced classification of emails and files? Or is it presenting disclaimers that need to be signed? Okay. Just a few more seconds. Okay, thank you. And the correct answer here is warn and block rules, because RightsWATCH is preventing, is blocking the user from performing an action. In this case, the action is save a file in a certain location or in a certain folder. Thank you so much for participating in this poll. And now we have a few minutes to answer some of your questions if you have any. So we have a question here. What can be customizable in terms of roles? So thank you for your question. So basically, anything you want, you can define for any role if it has classify rights, meaning that that role will be able to classify files or not. So you can define if a user or if a role, a group of users can read, save, print, export, reclassify, forward, ITA as the example I gave earlier, etc., etc. So another question. Is the Global Protector feature included in RightsWATCH standard? Well, the Global Protector, we have three types of Global Protector. We have Global Protector Client, the Global Protector Server, and the Global Protector Web. Global Protector Client, yes, it is included in RightsWATCH standard, but the Global Protector Server and the Global Protector Web are only included in the enterprise version of RightsWATCH, okay? Okay, so I can see that we have a few more questions, but we are in the nick of time. So I will answer these questions by email after this webinar, okay? So I just want you to remind you that this webinar will be available for you at our website, and that you can send any additional comments and questions to info@watchfulsoftware.com. And let me thank you for attending this webinar. We hope it was useful to you. And please stay tuned on the upcoming webinars that you can find in our website. And finally, let me ask you to answer a short feedback survey that will be prompted to you in the end of this webinar. And thank you so much for attending, and have a nice day.